Hi guys, welcome along to the new video. Today's video is going to be about gravity fed versus pump fed systems. So I see quite often people asking about the differences between pump fed and gravity fed systems, how a gravity fed system works, the pros and cons for gravity fed versus pump fed, which is the best system to use, etc, etc. Many questions. And so in this video today I'm going to address all those questions and more. So if this is the first video of mine you've seen, please do hit the subscribe button. Please hit the icon to receive notifications. I do put out content regularly, a couple of times a week, and do check out my channel. There'll be links at the end of this video to some playlists for example, for koi help videos, etc, etc. All the topics you see on the screen now, plus many more, are covered on there. So if any of those interest you, please do have a look. So firstly, I want to address a little point with regards to the way people talk about pump fed versus gravity fed. It's a little bugbear, a little simple thing, but once I kind of clarify this and you start to think about it in this way, it makes understanding the difference between the systems so much easier. And this is, it really is a terminology thing. So basically, people always ask the question: should my pond be pump fed or gravity fed? Is a gravity fed pond better than a pump fed pond? And it's all in the terminology, but what I want you to think about is it's not actually the pond that is gravity fed or pump fed. Gravity fed and pump fed refers to a filter, so an individual filter, not a pond. So the question you should be asking is it better to have a gravity fed filter or a pump fed filter? And I know that doesn't seem much, but once you understand that, it makes understanding the whole process much easier. So to expand on that, why it can get confusing is a pond itself could have a pump fed and a gravity fed filter running on it. It's the filter that is pump fed and the filter that is gravity fed. So basically, in simple terms, the filter itself is, the water is fed to the filter by a pump fed, or the water is fed to the filter by gravity, i.e. gravity fed. So if you understand and use that terminology, I think it makes it much easier to grasp the concept of the two. Okay, so I'll now talk about the two systems and explain how each one works. So we're starting with pump fed, and as I said before, in a pump fed filter, the water is transported from your pond to your filter via a pump. The filter is fed by a pump. Typically the pump will sit on the bottom of the pond. They have the cage around them, so you don't suck your fish into the pump, and to keep out large pieces of debris. The pump runs and it pushes the water into your filter. Then typically the water has to return to your pond from the filter once it's been filtered via gravity. So usually the filter itself in a pump fed system has to sit higher up, quite often on the side of the pond, depending where the outlet is. But it has to sit higher up than your pond water level so that the water can return from your filter via gravity back into your pond. So in a pump fed system, a pump fed filter, the filter is fed by a pump and returned by gravity. So pump fed, gravity return. And I've made some diagrams to show that. So hopefully you can see on this one, this is a typical pump fed system. And as I said, as I explained, the filter is sat higher up. Now this is kind of a best case scenario, to be honest, because where I've placed the outlet is quite low down, quite high up, sorry, on this diagram. Quite often the outlet is right at the bottom of the filter. For example, an easy pod, the outlet is at the bottom, so you can see in that situation the filter would have to sit right on top of the pond right high up, and it becomes difficult to conceal, etc. So this is kind of a best case scenario, really. And I'll just run that through now, and you'll see the pumping the water into the pond and then returning by gravity. Okay, so we'll go on to look at gravity fed now, and really it really isn't any more complicated than pump fed once you understand the principle. It is pretty straightforward. So with a gravity fed filter, typically what you have is a bottom drain in your pond, and I would advise anyone building a pond, be it your first or your 10th, please put a bottom drain in. It is an absolute game changer. It's a massive improvement over not having one. Can't stress that enough. But yeah, typically you'll have a bottom drain, and effectively the bottom drain is a sump that sits in the centre of your pond, and the top of the sump is at the bottom of your pond height. So the sump, effectively the drain itself, is sat below your pond, and then off that sump you have typically a 4-inch pipe running off that, and it goes underground and up, and that comes then up into your filter, and that's it. So that sump then has a cover on top which typically has an air dome, so you get a column of air, and the air bubbles rise up, and then they're pushed, and they generate currents in the water that basically push all the debris on the bottom into the bottom drain. Okay, I'm kind of getting it, I'm digressing a little bit, but you've got a sump, you've got a pipe, and it goes into your filter. Now basically when you fill up your pond with water, the pipe, the sump, underground, all fills with water, and as the water comes up in your pond, so too the water comes up in your filter, because the two are connected by the pipe and the drain underneath. So whatever height your pond water is at, your filter water is at the same height. Okay, now the outlet of this filter then has a pump connected to it, and that pump pumps the water back to your pond. Okay, so in the gravity fed filter, what we've got basically is gravity feed and pumped return. Whereas if you remember with the pump fed system, we had a pump feed and gravity return. We've now got gravity feed and pump return. Okay, so it's not really any more complicated. It's just kind of the reverse, if you like. So basically I'll put these diagrams up now properly, and you can see it, how it actually works. So I'll run that through now, and you can see the effect of increasing the pond water, and now it also increases the filter water level. Okay, and then adding a pump on the outlet of the filter, and you can see the water being pumped back to the pond. And basically the act of pumping the water effectively out of the filter creates that flow, as the filter is continuously topped back up by the water from the drain, so it creates that flow into your filter. Okay, and just to make the point, the position of your filter, the ideal water level in your filter is the same as the water level in your pond. So that's how you sit your filter. And just to show that, I've got this diagram which is basically showing you the correct position of the filter, and then one set too high and one set too low, and I'll run that through and you can see how that works and the consequences of getting that wrong. Okay, so they're the two systems, pump fed gravity return, gravity fed pump return. And in terms of recommending one over the other, without a shadow of a doubt, the gravity fed system is the much better system. And I'll go now through some advantages and disadvantages of each one, and you can see exactly why I recommend a gravity fed system. Okay, so we start with a pump fed system first, and we'll go through the advantages of pump fed filter. Firstly, no buried pipe work. So all the pipe work, everything pump fed in a pump fed filter system is all above ground, so it's all accessible. You can't have any leaks underneath without being able to see them. You know, it's all easily maintainable. Secondly, it is cheaper. A pump fed system is cheaper. You don't have the expense of a bottom drain. You don't have the large diameter pressure pipe underneath underneath your pond, and you don't have the labour associated with installing that underground pipe work. And lastly, it's quite useful if you want to empty your pond or you want to take some water out for whatever reason. A pump fed system, it's very easy to turn your pump on, remove your hose from your filter, put it to waste to pump out your pond in that way. In terms of disadvantages to being pump fed, there are many, to be honest. And any pipework failure, so a fitting comes off in the filter house, a hose splits or anything like that, it can be catastrophic. Basically, your pump will keep pumping the water out until the pond's empty. Now, as we've said, 20-25 mil they pump down to. So you know, you go out to work, you could come home to a pond with 20 mil of water in and a lot of dead fish. So quite a big disadvantage to being pump fed. Secondly, the pump impeller itself, as the solid fish waste, leaves, all the muck out the pond goes through the pump, the impeller inside dices it all up into little tiny bits, makes a mess of it, makes it more difficult to filter out. So again, another disadvantage to being pump fed. Thirdly, the bottom of the pond itself will never ever be clean. As I said, 20-25 mil is what these submersible pumps pump down to. So you'll have a 20 mil, 25 mil layer of silt at the bottom of your pond, where bacteria can harbour, etc. And obviously unsightly, so you know, you don't want that. You've got the pump. Fourth, you've got the pump and the pipe work coming off the pump in your pond. So it's an obstacle. It's a thing for your fish to damage themselves on, and in my experience, invariably they do. So that's another quite a big disadvantage to being pump fed. And then you've just got the aesthetic of the pump itself and the pipe work coming up and over the wall and running along to your filter. Unsightly. Difficult to hide, and obviously the pump itself and the pipe coming over the wall you can't hide. You've just got to live with. Another disadvantage is the wear on the pump itself is very high with a pump fed system, because these are not dirty water pumps. Koi pond pumps are for clean water, so when you're pumping muck, waste, leaves, grit, sand through a pump, you very quickly wear the internals of those pumps, and quite a high attrition rate on a pump fed system. And then lastly, the filter itself needs to sit higher up than the pond water. So more often than not, they actually have to sit on the side of the pond. So quite big, quite unsightly, difficult to conceal. You know, you've again an aesthetic issue, but you've got that often that filter sat on the side of your pond. Okay, so move on to gravity fed. We'll start again with the advantages. In a gravity fed system, because of the nature of the bottom drain, the pond bottom is kept clean right to the bottom. There's no silt, there's no opportunity for bacteria to be harboured. The bottom of your pond will be kept spotlessly clean. If you have a leak on your filter system, pipework, on a fitting, on a hose, whatever, with a gravity fed system it won't empty your pond. It'll come down, it'll bring your level down, but it'll come down to the height of the leak basically, and so you won't, you know, empty your pond completely, and the effect that has. All the plumbing with a gravity fed system is concealed underground, so there's no plumbing, there's no unsightly pipe work, no filter set in your pond, there's none of that. It's all concealed, all hidden outside, so aesthetically much nicer looking. And also as a result, all the maintenance is done dry, so everything's accessible and it's all on dry land. There's no submerged parts, there's no underwater bits, it's all dry. Solids, waste, everything reaches the filter intact. There's no impeller to chop it up. It goes down the 4-inch line, straight down the line, and then up into your filter, so your filter can easily take out the big lumps without dicing them up. So much cleaner in that respect. Also the pump life itself is extended because the pump is fitted on the outlet of the filter, so your pump only ever sees clean filtered water and pumps it back to your pond. There's also, lastly, a very slight advantage to running costs because with the gravity fed system, all the water is clean and usually there is less head height to pump on a gravity system. So a slight advantage in terms of running costs as well. And then disadvantages of a gravity fed system, I'll be honest, I struggled. The only thing really I can see is the initial cost to install. Cost of a bottom drain, usually around 140, 150 pounds, UK pounds. Pressure pipe, the 4-inch pressure pipe isn't cheap, 30 quid a length. Fittings can be 20 quid for an elbow. So, you know, a couple of £100 extra in materials, and then you've got your labour on top, or your time if you do it yourself. So yeah, but in my opinion, well worth it. So as I said before, I highly recommend going gravity fed and installing a bottom drain if at all possible. Okay, that's it. That's all I've got for this video. As I said earlier, if this is the first of my videos you've seen, please do have a look at my other videos. There'll be a link at the end to a playlist of my koi help videos, which is good, really useful, and there'll be something in there that's useful to you, I'm sure. Please have a look. Please also subscribe to the channel if you've not already. Hit the icon to receive notifications. And lastly, please do leave a comment, good or bad. I'm always interested to hear feedback from people, hear people's experiences and opinions. If you've got a video, something you'd like me to cover, leave that in the comments. If you like the video, give me a like. And I will see you in the next video, and in the meantime, everybody stay safe. I'll see you then.